Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming for a session that starts actually at 1 o'clock, but I think we're much later, and it's probably closer to 1:30 now. And so, very happy to be in Kolkata. The session is also quite fascinating because I know that all of you would love literature and love reading, and of course love Shobhaa. Sharbari is not with us, but she will join us shortly. I think she's tied up in another session. The topic for today is quite interesting also, but I think something which we don't quite agree with, which is that are women writers neglected? I certainly don't feel neglected. I don't know if Shobhaa feels neglected. But having said that, let's try and analyze where this thought or this kind of a discussion is coming from. Has Indian literature, Indian writing, Indian authors come up to the stage where they have the same respect and regard, publishers have the same respect and regard for Indian women writers as they do for Indian male writers, and how long has this journey been? Actually, if you look at early writing in India, there were, at that time, if you think about it, maybe 30 or 40. Oh, please, welcome, Sharbari. No. Yeah. No problem, no problem. So here's a third of our participants right here. So I think if we look at, sorry, I'll just carry on with that thought, Sharbari. So basically, the notion that you could actually become a published author, was that a very difficult premise for women in the past, and an author who could support a family, look after that? I think we still haven't come to that point for many Indian women writers. However, is it a career that is taken seriously by women? That's one side of the question. The other side of the question, I think, is how seriously do publishers take Indian authors? So I think I'll just start off with Shobhaa. Shobhaa, you've had a very, I would say, happening, illustrious career in writing. So I don't think you ever felt at all worried that, am I going to be neglected? Am I going to be overlooked in this world of publishing?
Well, thank you for the question, and good afternoon, and congratulations to Vinita and her team for organizing the second edition of the Times Lit Fest in Kolkata. We are all extremely happy to be here and delighted to be talking to all of you. The question of neglect is something, I have a problem with that word. I don't like the idea that women are categorized in the first place. And I don't see myself primarily as a woman writer. I see myself as a writer. So are we more neglected than men? I have a totally different take on this. There may be many male writers who feel even more neglected. They may, in their minds, be incredibly talented, gifted, worthy of the Booker, but they may feel that publishers have given them a raw deal. Just equally, there may be a lot of women out there who believe they have the talent and are not given the recognition that they deserve. But to answer your question specifically, when I wrote my first book, what did amaze and surprise me was the publisher walking in to commission a book and telling me that we are going to be taking a huge chance with you, and I was already an established columnist. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because there is no market for women across the world. No one is interested in women's voices. And frankly, I was stunned. I was speechless that more than 50% of the world, that a publisher could be saying that to me, an international imprint at that there is no market for women's voices, and no one is interested in women's voices. And the caveat was that if your first book is a commercial success, then you get your second book contract and so on. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I went out there, I wrote my book, it was a commercial success, and 20 books later, I believe you know, he has been proved wrong because there are hundreds and hundreds of extraordinarily talented women out there, to right here next to me, who are speaking their minds, who are writing the books they want to, and are finding a huge audience for their work.
Absolutely. So one point I do want to raise, which your publisher actually raised with you, is that there is no space for women's voices. I do want to point out that in most countries, especially where I also live part of the time in the UK, most of the readers are women. You know, they are the ones who provide the bulk of, you know, the readers and the book sales, etc. So if you do not have books which are addressing them, and when we talk about women's voices, I have to say, we were discussing this earlier, Shobhaa and I, that we have never written ever as a woman, you know, writing a book. We have written books on subjects which have appealed to us, and I may have, had I been a man, I may have picked those very same subjects. So it's not that I do, you know, discriminate between the subjects of, you know, that this is, oh, this is meant to be written by a woman, for women, etc. I think you write about what you're passionate about. And that's the point, Shobhaa, because you have always been writing straight from the heart, sometimes on your sleeve, and putting it all out there for people to read. It's a point of view. It's a very strong, you may agree, disagree. And I still remember the kind of concern that Shobhaa raised in her very early books when she started writing very openly about sex and so on, which again is something women did not do. So definitely it was, these things push the envelope further. They make the door wider. They make it like, you know, for many more authors, therefore women authors to come and to become bold enough to write. Of course, we did have before that Kamla Das and, you know, other writers as well who have done similar kind of very, erotic literature along with other kinds of literature. But did that make the publishers nervous in any way? Did they feel that, no, women can't do this kind of thing, or there would be no readers for this kind of thing? How do you feel about it, Sharbari? Though your career, I think, has been largely abroad, your writing has been, how do you find, you know, recently I saw this film called The Wife, which is got Glenn Close in it. I don't know how many of you have seen The Wife. Has anybody? Anyone seen the film? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is about a Nobel Prize winner who, it turns out in the film, the wife has actually done all the hard work. Can you imagine? She has actually written the books, but
None of
because
the credit.
publishers feared that if she published them, they would, nobody would buy them or nobody would read them. So they put the husband's name on the book, and instantly he became this, lots of fame and fortune.
The same thing happened with Colette, the famous writer Colette,
Yes.
which I just discovered actually. First of all, I want to say it's a complete honor to be on stage with you. I've been reading you for a long time, and actually I'm
Can
amazed.
you hold it a little closer?
I'm amazed that when you started, it was even tougher. And it's amazing, what you've done. But just, yeah, definitely. I'm facing different issues in the U.S. because I'm dealing with being a woman and... Can you hear me?
Can you hear her?
Sorry.
No.
Yes.
Can you just hold it a little closer and loud?
Closer? Okay, sorry about that. So I'm dealing with a twofold situation, being American and Bengali at the same time. So you've got the issue of, by the way, publishers still say that stuff in the US. Yeah, even though the readership in the US is largely female and the market is driven by what they call women's fiction and so on. But I have that issue, but I also have, can you write more like Jhumpa Lahiri? Because that's what they want. They want saris, they want arranged marriages, they want mango in the title, they want curry, and it's really difficult. And I want to write about what I want to write about. They're also very uncomfortable with the way women of color write about sex. So if we write about sex in a way that's a little too confident, that makes them uncomfortable. So that's directed as well. So it's it's not neglect, as she said. It's more othering.
So can I just ask you, because you've written for Quantico, which of course is almost like a thriller, and it's a very different kind of genre. I've also written thrillers, and again, a very difficult area to negotiate, because even though we've had Agatha Christie, we've had so many women writers who are very well established, but an Indian woman getting into these areas is possibly still very difficult for publishers, not just in India, but abroad as well. So did you find it a struggle to break into something like Quantico, or did you already have a body of work and therefore it was easier for you?
It was an interesting situation. First of all, Quantico is so crazy in that it's Priyanka Chopra. She's a Bollywood star. She's not Hollywood. So the fact that they even took a chance on her, that in and of itself was extraordinary. So the situation was so extraordinary that they needed a writer of, at least some subcontinental background, So, but yes, in order for me to get into that room, I had to have created some work. Otherwise, they needed somebody with a little bit of experience, yeah.
So how did you break into writing? So let's just go back to your early years and then we can take stock of where we are today. So did you break into writing in America itself? Was it difficult to get your first book published because A, you're female and then you're Indian? So did that make it more difficult for you?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, the thing is, Westland, Tranquebar published my novel, and that's why I'm here. They're the ones that really sort of embraced me and took a risk on me. It's mostly my fiction, short fiction, that has been published in the United States. And then, of course, Quantico, and then different, I did a play, which is being produced off Broadway in New York next year. But it's been very, very difficult. There's a certain level of exotification and ignorance that in the United States involving us. And that's the truth. And yes.
You're absolutely right, because I also got my first novel published in the UK, and because it was not stereotypical, because it did not have this beautiful fading heroine with long hair and very, sylph-like and constantly languishing while the hero is sort of doing his best to rescue her. It did not fit into the stereotypes. I had one, middle-aged a woman who was the central character, detective. All these things, if you break the stereotypes, then it becomes far more difficult. So I also got an unknown publisher, really. I think he just set up his company, and he's the one who took a chance. But then he was very happy because it went on to win an award, a Costa Award. So suddenly for the first novel, so it got recognition. But it was not that easy. However, I think if you believe in something, like I got a publisher quite easily in India, it helped because a lot of the publishing industry, a lot of you may know this, is driven by women. Actually, there are a lot of women working in the publishing industry. So sometimes the doors open because there are women who read your books and they completely get it. They completely understand that this is what...
You know what I found out that was really remarkable? Is that India is the second largest publishing market in the world. It's ahead of the UK. It's only behind the United States. It's ahead of Europe and France. That to me is, that's amazing.
So now I want to ask Shobhaa, because, she's really been driving this not only as a writer, but also as a publisher herself. She also has an imprint that she does for Penguin. So if you look at it, Shobhaa, did you ever have a bias or a prejudice towards publishing male authors because you thought, well, women don't sell or something like that? That's one. The second part of the question is, which a lot of us are facing today, is there a sense that there is a certain kind of glamour that women have to look like this, they have to be like this? So the author herself, her writing may not be that great, but nonetheless, if she looks like in a certain way, then she's more likely, especially if she's young, she's more likely to get published. So both these answers, please.
Just before I answer both those questions, very pertinent and very relevant in terms of what they convey. I have to add to what you said, that write like Jhumpa Lahiri. Or when I started off writing, all the foreign agents, the ones from the UK as well as the US, would tell me, for your next book, why don't you introduce a romantic American or a British character so that we can identify with that person?
Absolutely.
And why don't you kind of set some of the novel in either the US or the UK? And why aren't your women more suppressed or depressed or oppressed?
They should be
And-
victims.
Or
They
They
should
have
be
to be
victims.
submissive. They have, yeah. There is a certain stereotype. And I absolutely refused to write that kind of a book. And I said, listen, you either publish me the way I write, or it's all right. It doesn't matter to me, but I will not compromise and create characters for your markets. You accept my books on my terms and create a new market with a different kind of a projection of a woman of color, an Asian woman, an Indian woman. Not every single woman in India is what you imagine her to be. And I will not play into that stereotype of the entire country being one huge begging bowl, because that is what is comfortable to the foreign audiences. I refuse to play that game. So that's okay. I may have lost out on a couple of
No, you
book
haven't
deals.
lost out on anything.
Yeah,
The
I
head-
agree.
But
the
at least you changed
The
the-
second
you-
largest
yeah,
market.
yeah,
You haven't
yeah.
lost out on a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You don't
I
need to
care.
pander.
So I really
No.
don't
And
care.
you change the environment for other
Exactly.
writers.
Yeah, so to get back to your question, as a publisher, when I get submissions, unlike V.S. Naipaul, who famously said, I can tell it's a woman writing from the very first paragraph. And that was a put down, and it was a horrible thing to say, because you're not going to use that filter. And I get at least 5 manuscripts a week that I really enjoy, I devour, I pounce on. Not once does it occur to me that should I be looking at it as a woman who's writing, should I be judging it on that basis? Either you are a good writer or you're not. It's not about being a man or a woman. And I don't think any publisher today should go by that kind of using that little matrix to judge a manuscript. But about marketability, yes, what you said is just the tip of the iceberg, because a lot of people may not be aware that today's edit mates in the most prestigious publishing houses are run by the marketing team. It's no longer about editors who pitch a book based on the quality of writing. So even if they believe in that book and they're pitching it as a great title to be backing, the marketing team will first Google the person and say, oh, young, oh yes, female, all right, good looking, Instagram followers, so many, likes on Facebook, so many, Twitter, so much, algorithms say we can back this book. But interestingly, I'm sure you both of you may be aware of this, young male writers are being sexually objectified in almost the exact way. They look at a manuscript, they Google the man's profile.
His looks.
His
Yes.
looks. And I know of 2 young, or at least 2 or 3 young male writers in India who've had themselves completely fixed up surgically, like you would, like a Bollywood star.
Like Botox
Like
and nose
Botox,
features.
getting their hair, fixed, their teeth fixed, their profile, maybe a new jawline put in.
More manly. More manly.
Certainly worked out at the gym to make sure the abs, which they often display. And they talk about, they like the idea of projecting themselves as sex symbols. It's not something that someone's holding a gun to their head. Right. They play along with it because it sells more books. If you see even our mythological books, which sell amazingly well for whatever reason, Shiva has been sexualized, and Shiva is the
Abs and
sexy
everything.
god, and the stud, even the way he's illustrated and projected.
Even Ram, I mean,
And
like
Ram,
he's got rippling muscles and
all of it.
everything.
So it is part of a much bigger picture of objectifying and sexualizing not just the characters in your own books, but the author himself or herself.
It's about selling.
It's
the
about
bottom
selling.
line. Yeah.
Everything is about marketing now. So then we come to the, to obviously the related question is that if you are middle-aged and you don't have any of these attributes, now is that kind of woman writer more likely to get neglected today? And now let's just take the Indian context, because we do know that the prizes abroad have very often been given to women, not necessarily because of their marketability, but often, let me also put the other side of the story, is those books don't necessarily sell. I mean, nobody's really pushing those books very hard. They may win the Orange Prize, they may, this prize, that prize, but that doesn't mean that they have sold even a single copy because nobody's backing that book. Not because it's not excellent writing, but because what the author may look like or, may come across like. So similarly, in India, is that kind of an author likely to get neglected? What is your opinion?
I'll just answer that briefly and then we'll go to Sharbari. That I decided to upend all of this and to turn it to my own advantage because I wanted to break through the ageist barrier myself and forcefully because women are definitely targeted and put into an ageist slot, not just in India but across the world. So I did it first by writing Shobhaa at 60 and I've just done it coming up 2 years, Shobhaa at 70. Because I wanted to say that it's ridiculous to be able to be apologetic about your age. Why should I be apologetic about my age?
But I have to say,
was Kishwar Singh apologetic at 80, writing? No. Is Mulkraj Anand, was he apologetic at 80, 90? Was he being judged on how he has aged?
But you're an extraordinary case.
No, it's not
but
about
I
that.
think she's totally
It's not
correct.
about me. It's about speaking up on behalf of middle-aged ladies, senior citizens,
absolutely.
women.
And taking
that
it head
we
on,
have to. And taking it head on and turning it around to say, look, there's no question of being discriminated against or neglected because what I'm saying ought to be more important than how I look.
No,
and
100%.
also because there is a large readership. I think this is where the publishers often get it wrong because they only think that the 20s, people who are under 20 are reading Chetan Bhagat and therefore that is the kind of book you should be putting out there. They forget that a lot of the people who are sitting at home actually reading books are the elderly, and what we call senior citizens, But none of us want to be, left out of the story. And I think that is what Shobhaa has done, is that she has managed to put the story of, the 60s and the 70s, people in that age group out there. What do you think?
But what I meant by extraordinary is that the thing is, you've been doing this before it was a trend to do this, because right now you have to look in the United States. Jennifer Lopez has owned 50, and I am extremely grateful to her for that.
Madonna is 50 or 60?
No, Madonna's 60.
60.
60. She owned Madonna. But I have to tell you, that, I think here you're one of the few that have been doing this for a while, and that's what I meant by extraordinary. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you were doing it before Jennifer Lopez and Madonna. And you see, things are getting. It's so ageist in the U.S. It's unbelievable. Hollywood is a prime example of you turn 40 and suddenly you're invisible. You have absolutely
even for a writer? Even for a writer, because
yes.
you're behind the scenes. You're not even coming up front there.
Yes, very much so. So it's very important that people like you are doing this here and there. It's extremely imperative to own your age, to be proud of it, because there's such an incredible strength in being older.
Yeah,
I mean, a wisdom and a power, not just a power, which Jennifer Lopez and stuff are owning. But writers are still, you see, Hollywood at least, it's visual, right? We're seeing Jennifer, she's out there, she looks fabulous. But the authors, we're not seeing them, so it's difficult to package or brand an author of a certain age.
So is that because the industry, so even though we believe that women are more visible and therefore they are getting more work, etc. The industry, whether we talk about Hollywood or we talk about script writing, etc., or we talk about the publishing industry in India or abroad, it's very patriarchal still. I mean, you might have a woman heading it, but that doesn't stop her from being as patriarchal as a man because she also wants to drive the numbers. She wants to see that this book sells. And so what would sell? You have to package it properly and you have to do all those things. So that is the kind of change probably that needs to come in. And why is it that a plump, middle-aged man, balding, etc., can be a best-selling author in India and have, people, this room would be like full right to the back, if somebody like that was speaking. But if it is women, or it is one woman who's maybe, whatever, doesn't fit that glamour stereotype, it would be like maybe just 5 or 6 people sitting in this room. So there is, what is it in our mindset, Shobhaa, that we tend to ourselves discriminate, whether we are male or female, even as readers. You may not even know who this thing is, but already the discrimination factor has happened.
Well, that is a mindset which is going to take a long, long time to change. However, there is an exception when you're talking about a hugely successful female writer in India. I'm thinking Sudha Murthy. Yeah. She breaks every stereotype in terms of what she's writing, the way she looks, the way she presents herself. There is content that people identify with. It's not because she's Shobhaa Murthy. It's not because she is. There's another one who, Shobhaa Mudgal, who's just on a, who's written, I find that book extraordinary.
Looking for Miss Sargam.
It is outstanding, and I was in conversation with her in Mumbai, and each story is like a mini movie script. Each one has the potential to make a fabulous, even a short film, because she writes very well. She is not a writer primarily, she's a singer, and she has a huge fan base. But yes, to take Shobhaa seriously as a writer is going to take her a lot more than it may take a man. There's no question of less talent. Of less talent, I might add. I mean, for example, if Amjad Ali Khan were to write a book, yes, he'd get a packed room. But for Shobhaa, it may not be the same, like you mentioned, because they'll say, oh, ye to gaane wali hai. So there is already a prejudice that's there.
Well, no, it's off of what you just said. Okay, so there's this need to categorize women, but to put us in boxes that are neat and palatable. That is across all cultures, be it India, the US, the Middle East, wherever. So I think that plays into it. Like you just said, oh, she sings. She's just a singer. It's the concept that a woman could be so many things which makes no sense because we are the best at multitasking. We're better than men at multitasking. So you'd think that it would be easier to have us be more expansive, but that's not the case.
So I think then there is also a differentiation which takes place possibly, which we were talking also about earlier, in terms of the kind of payment that women are given when they're writing books or they're writing anything at all. Is there a discrimination, do you feel, Shobhaa or Sharbari, where when women writers, because in order to become a really successful writer like Shobhaa or Sharbari, is that when you can be actually financially independent. And I think that is what most people today, whether be it a man or a woman, doesn't matter, whatever profession you're engaged in, you do want to be able to live by it, so that you don't have to do other things. But most women whom I know who are writing in India usually have a day job. They do something else and then they write part-time. And this may be the scenario for men as well, most of them, but for women definitely. And also, they have a husband or somebody or a partner or someone who supports them, and therefore they can do it. So it becomes almost not taken too seriously, and this is what I worry about when there are women writers, because it has definitely happened to me. Oh, you two just sitting in your room and writing, yeah, what is so busy? Why are you so busy? When I tell them, no, I can't come out, I can't do this, I'm writing about, what's wrong, So there is the neglect, I think, also comes from people not taking it seriously enough, because it's definitely not paying all the bills. So,
well, there is, the general perception is, if you're a woman, no matter how hard you work, and if you're a writer, it's something you do on the side. It's like a hobby. It's always a hobby or an indulgence. A woman is, isn't she lucky she's married to a wealthy man or a powerful man, or, she comes from a rich background and she wouldn't know what it really means to, she does it because, it gets her fame, it gets her...
Or a husband lets her do it.
Or, no, allows her to do it.
Allows her to do it.
Allows is the key word. She's allowed to do it either by her father or her husband. So that is a perception, unless you're a J.K. Rowling, but she had it tough too. She had a very tough time. But that kind of a phenomenal success comes once in a century. Yeah, I mean, she is the exception. Can most of us live on what we earn as writers? The frank answer is no. We cannot, but I'm not sure how many men can also write full-time writers in India, particularly. The margins are not that great. You're not selling those kind of numbers. Today, the opportunities are more because there are, the options. Maybe Netflix will pick up your book, or some other platform will pick it up for a mini-series, or it will be made into a movie, or because of a certain profile that you have, like in my case, I do get a lot of paid gigs where I'm called as a speaker. So, but that supplements what I earn as through my writing, and I'm also a columnist, so I've got 2 or 3 layers of income. But for all of that, I put in at least 10 hours a day of
Serious work.
serious work. And there's no compromise on that. And no matter what, today is an exception, but if I am in Mumbai, no matter what, 1,500 words a day is my discipline. Between 1,500 words to 2,000 words a day, as I'm sure it's for you or for you. No one wants to see it, but a man has the luxury to say, don't disturb me, I'm writing. Yeah. I don't think I've ever said that to my family, don't disturb me, I'm writing. I do not isolate myself. I don't have a study. I write from the dining table, and for me, that's the most productive place. Yeah, so do you.
I think we all write from the dining table.
So I can keep an eye on what everybody's
Everything.
doing.
Exactly.
It's the center of the house.
Exactly, it's the center of the house. And it works well for me because I've just trained myself to write from the dining table. But I don't think I would have had actually the privilege of saying, I need a study, or I need to go off to the Himalayas to write my next masterpiece. A man can say it, and society, family will make those concessions. And I know that there are men who write, whose wives will tiptoe around the house and tell the children, don't disturb him, he's writing. Whereas no one thinks twice about disturbing me. At any time of the day, when I'm writing, and they say, mom's at it again. Like, what's mom doing? She's writing, big deal.
And it's most annoying when you're in the middle of this beautiful thought in your head, and the maid comes and says,
hungry.
No, not me, Mommy, I'm hungry. It's a maid comes and says, Acha, aaj bhindi banani hai, to kaun si dal, And you're saying, what? Yeah, tell me.
No, everything she said. I don't even know what I could add to it. It's incredible. I also have to do, in the U.S. we have a new word for it because it's called side hustle. Side hustle. Side hustle. So as a writer, unless you're J.K. Rowling, you have to have a side hustle. And my side hustle is sometimes I have to get hired to write scripts. I become a gun for hire to write a TV pilot or a script. And that's how I have to supplement my own writing, to pay to live while I do my own stuff, not other people's stuff. And then I'm artist in residence in the film and television department in a university. So I have to go make appearances, I have to mentor students, graduate film students. I have to do these things to supplement. But it's all in the realm of writing, so that's a wonderful luxury for me.
But the central question is, how seriously are you still taken? And I'm not talking about the family, I'm talking about your own circle.
Oh my God, I love that question.
Yeah.
I love that question because so you have to understand, I'm a Desi girl in the whitest town in America. Have you seen the Stepford Wives?
Yes.
My town is based on the Stepford
Oh my
Wives. If that can give you an idea. So all my friends are very white. They're lovely. It's all white. So so I'm having a lot of issues with them right now mainly because I went off on Winston Churchill recently and they're mostly British and so on. But that's a great question because they're not taking me seriously. Even after Quantico, they started sort of, and then my novel came out and they're like, oh yeah, Sharp is, she's
a writer?
They still don't see what I do as a job. And it's a job.
So I think that is also a form of neglect, which is
100%.
where you just cannot take yourself seriously because others are not doing you that honor, And I do believe that when you are writing in these circumstances, when you have to go out and market yourself, and that is what it is, Shobhaa, where we all have to take our hats off to you, because you're the one who just stuck it out. You knew what you were doing is difficult, But now it is your job. I mean, if you were to describe yourself as what you do, you're not like a part-time writer, you are a writer. I mean, you've kind of reinvented that whole genre, I think, in India. But I still think the dining table is very key to all of this, because somewhere as women, as women who have households to run, and as women who are writers, I won't say also writers, but who are writers, it's very tough to disassociate. At one level, it's great, because it's all multitasking. It's all multitasking, and it's not anything. So I'm going to open this up to the house for questions. If anybody has any questions, then please go ahead. And if there's any specific person you want to answer, do say. But I just want a question. I don't want a bhashan. I mean, no long lectures, just a question. Okay? Yeah. You put up your hand.
So my question is that for most of the women writers, are there like particular genres that you are probably sort of stereocasted into? Because, for every J.K. Rowling and Agatha Christie, who have done certain genres like the children or the mystery, are women writers sort of, straitjacketed into particular genres where they can't move
Sure.
beyond
I think
that?
this is a very, very good and a very relevant question. Are we driven towards certain genres like romance? Being a woman, would you be more comfortable? So have you faced this issue?
Well, I mean, the novel I wrote recently that's just been published is historical fiction. And there's a romance aspect to it, but it's very, very political. And it's mostly about the relationship between two women, their sisterhood, the sisterhood and so on. I did have people say to me, maybe you should focus a little bit more on the romance. Not my publishers in India. They did not do that because they're run by women. They were not thinking that. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes women are, like for instance, science fiction is not something you see as many women writing. You do have amazing writers like Ursula Le Guin and Octavia Butler, but you don't see, in India, do you see as many science fiction writers?
Science fiction and science per se, you do not see too many.
So that's a little unfortunate, I think.
Straitjacketing is something that is a temptation for most publishers because they go by their commercial instincts more than anything else. But if you submit a manuscript that is original and which you can tell pretty quickly in at least the first couple of chapters that the person has something to say, which is not only of commercial value but also literary value, and which is like a breakthrough in many ways, then I don't think it matters at all whether it falls into any specific category. For me, it's either a good readable book or it's not. And I don't go necessarily by categories. So, but that is the criteria I use.
No, that is for what you use as a publisher, but I think his is a wider question, that do publishers therefore imagine that you would be much better at romance and much better at a particular kind of a genre rather than the kind of books or even the sort of serials that you've written, Shobhaa. I mean, you've covered a lot of ground. And I don't know whether when you were doing those early television serials, where you were writing characters which are male as well as female, were you getting any kind of directions from people that, hey, you can't say this or you can't do that or whatever?
Well, interestingly enough, the very first soap that I did, which ran into more than 500 episodes.
500?
More than, I've lost, was Swabhiman. And it was on a government channel. It was on DD. And the protagonist was a woman called Svetlana. And it broke every rule you can think of because she was an unwed mother. She was a mistress of a powerful 100 years ago.
Yeah,
At least,
that just
at least
shows you how
35
old.
years ago. But that a government channel would okay a script like that, and it goes on to show her coming into her own and claiming what she believes is rightfully hers. So we were there, 35 years ago. Nobody ever tried to say that, oh, maybe you should tweak it, maybe you should make her a victim, maybe you shouldn't make her this, she has too much attitude, none of it. And every single woman character that I have written in my early novels and even subsequently have been, protagonists who have minds of their own, and maybe they pay a price for it, but a man in this identical situation would probably also pay the same price. But certainly there was no attempt to tell me that why don't you change the character so that there's more sympathy for the woman because she just has way too much attitude to fly. But on the other hand, in India, we've had for centuries actually, like Telugu poets writing extraordinary erotic poetry, which was accepted, which is now fortunately in translation, so we can all access it. And of course, whether it's Kamala Das writing in her own way, in her own time, about her own life as a very sexually adventurous person. First person account of her own experiences. So that again was more than 35, 40 years ago. So we had the environment, but I think that environment did change.
I feel like everything I feel like I'm learning things. I'm on stage. I'm learning so much about it. It feels far more progressive than the U.S.
Yeah, yeah.
It has been, and I hope we come back to that.
Progressive.
Progressive.
I think because as the publishing industry grows, it also gets, the boxes also appear. There will be certain kind of categorization. Because, for example, when I wrote my first novel, I just wrote it as a novel. But when I gave it to my publisher, she said, oh, you've written a thriller. I didn't even realize because I was looking at a particular, which is the best way to communicate what I want to say. And then it got slotted into a straitjacket that this is a thriller, sort of thing. So in similar ways...
that happens to men too.
Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, that happens to men too.
Yeah, that happens to men. But what I'm saying is that along with that come other things. Things that you can do, things that you can't do. And then let's just examine the whole problem where women, I wouldn't say get neglected, but certainly get chastised, is when we talk about sex. We did cover this. Yes. When your book actually addresses the whole issue of sex. So you said, oh yes. So I want to know about that.
Well, yes, because right now, just to complete the point, there's a disgusting category which is called chicklet. Yes. And I've said it earlier, and I'll repeat it again. If there is no dicklet, why should there be chicklet? I mean, that category itself is discriminatory and is creating, barriers. Now, when I did write my first book, and then, of course, after that, Starry Nights and other books, which dealt with female sexuality in a very upfront way, I was, my God, chastised is a very, very mild word. I was slaughtered in print and across the board for how dare you, For most women, it is that, how dare you, about anything that is outside that box. Yeah. You cannot step outside that Lakshman Rekha, which is the patriarchal society normally creates. As long as you behave yourself and write books about women suffering, yes, it's fine.
Virginally
suffering. A virgin suffering in terrible ways, in an abusive marriage, with an alcoholic husband, and living a life of deprivation and poverty, which is true for, of course, must...
She's rescued by another man.
By a man.
Yes.
But in a context like India, it is the reality of 90% of our women. There's no question that they lead lives of utter deprivation. But a writer has the right to choose their subjects. And they should not be dictated to as to which category or which class of society they should write about. They write about what they know best. It's a bit pretentious after all, you're not Raja Ram Mohan Roy. You're writing a story. You're not there necessarily to reform society. That's right. If you're sending a message through your own writing, that's fantastic. But even at the end of it all, when you deconstruct it, you are there to tell a story in the best way you can. And if it connects, that is your reward. Absolutely. If the readers respond to what you're saying, that is your prize.
You want to
writing
comment?
that's beautiful, because writing with an agenda usually messes up the story. And also, doesn't it alienate your readers? I don't want to lecture to my readers. I mean, recently I interviewed and someone asked me yesterday, was there a message in your novel? And I said, if there was, it wasn't as deliberate. If there was, it came out of the storytelling and the arcs and so on, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Anybody has any more? Yeah, okay. There's a young lady here. Microphone, just get up and say it, because I don't know. There's no mic coming to you right now. Yeah. Okay. So has there been a change in attitudes of the publishers and others towards a woman writing vis-a-vis what it used to be? Okay, can you start?
I mean, I started writing about 15 years ago. So definitely there's a change, definitely. I mean, I can speak mostly to the US market or the foreign market. Yeah, I mean, there's a little more expansion. I still feel like I'm listening to you on stage. I feel like India's ahead of the game.
No, we are. No, we are.
Compared to the US.
Probably are, yeah.
I have to say, in terms of like being expansive and opening up storylines and having these incredibly strong characters, I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, the US, yeah, white women, yes, but African American women or South Asian women in the US we're in this category, oppressed, submissive, sexually, unadventurous and so on. So the US has a long way to go, but I can't speak to India, but we're still behind the curve.
A very quick question on that is, did Priyanka Chopra in Quantico, did she actually push the envelope? Did she make
She did.
To a big difference?
100% she did. Oh. And what she was up against is remarkable. The level of racism and ignorance. I remember someone asking me, what is Priyanka? They're like, okay, so she's a big deal in India. I'm like, that's a mild understatement, but yes, she's a big deal. What is she equivalent to in the United States? And I go, Beyonce. And they were like, what? Really? I go, yes. Beyonce has 100,000 people in a stadium. PC will have 100,000 people in a stadium. And they were mind blown. They don't get it, they don't get it. They're behind the curve. It's as simple as that. But she did make a difference, yes.
Shobhaa?
To me, it will be interesting to see how PC impacts the next person who makes the same kind of an impact, whether that is likely to happen or she is the exception. Because I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and watch. But she has aced the game. She has, and it's remarkable. Now, just to ask a naughty-ish question, I can't resist that, is she's married to Nick Jonas, a white guy.
Yes.
Had she married an Indian actor, would it have in any way affected her ratings? Because she's on every talk show, all the late night shows. She's just topped the list across the world of the most searched celebrity, the one who gets all the endorsement. She's a UN ambassador. She's just been recognized at the Morocco Film Festival. Is it the combo that's working fantastically well for her?
I think, that's a really great question. I do think there's something to the fact that she's married Nick Jonas, who is very recognizable in the United States and is popular and is part of this fun, brother band or whatever. I mean, he's 10 years old, but who cares? And that's another thing she did that's remarkable, because she's so much older than him. And that was, I think, a very important statement as well for women of a certain age. But I think that's a valid question. I definitely
because,
do.
When you see someone who's as wonderful and has had her breaks in Hollywood, like Deepika Padukone.
Yeah.
But when she lands in LA, they call out Priyanka Chopra.
Yes, you're
to
absolutely
them,
right.
every Indian beautiful actress is Priyanka
it's
Chopra.
Priyanka
I mean, they haven't even bothered to find out.
But I think
They messed up her. Do you know that initially, the first season of Quantico, they had some kind of promotional thing with her, and they put a picture of somebody else. another beauty queen.
Oh, not Priyanka.
Not Priyanka.
Oh, in the first ads.
Yeah.
They just can't make out
Not,
one
not
brown
from
girl
Quantico,
from another
something
brown.
else. Somebody else did that. And they had to issue an apology. It's
It happened with
ridiculous.
Baywatch as well.
Yes.
When she got the part in Baywatch. So for them, it's just like you said, another
We're
beautiful
one more brown
girl.
girl
Lump
running around.
everybody together. That's right.
They all look the same. Okay. So, Bas, okay, one last question. One last question, then we go. Okay, this lady here. And that's absolutely the last question.
Shobhaa, you are talking about that series you made for a government channel 35 years ago, when nobody said you don't do this, do that.
But hear you. Just
Can you hear me now? Yeah. You said that you were not told to the serial you made for the government channel, right? That was 35 years ago. Do you think today, in the current situation, with all this trolling and all, a woman writer can, can be chastised, or if I don't use that word, be told to tone down the writing on sex or whatever?
well, women with minds of their own, expressing opinions, often get shot these days just for being who they are. I'm talking about Gauri Lankesh. But in the TV industry, which is dominated by women and is primarily about women, the environment has changed. It's no longer about women like the characters I'd written about so long ago. After that came another wave, which was the Tulsi and the Ekta Kapoor serials, which was another stereotype of the Saas Bahu serials. And now, of course, women have to be Nagins or reincarnated or ghosts or bhutnis, and people who can be reborn as in various avatars, in various animal forms, reptile forms, horror stories. So I think each decade comes
Also
with its own.
Netflix, which has changed, like those four
Netflix
girls
has changed things a lot, and there are being, women are being encouraged to write parts for women, which reflect today's realities and contemporary realities much more. So there is optimism on one level, there is hope. I don't think the government agencies can actively interfere with what's on OTT platforms, which is just as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks to my wonderful panelists, and thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you. Bye. Bye.